So here's a question. What the hell is individuation anyhow? And why is it so important when we're healing from a narcissistic relationship? So we're taking on the topic, the big topic of individuation this month in my healing program, which is our most intensive program for community building, support, information, and an opportunity to get questions answered about narcissism and healing. And that link is here in the video notes if you're at all interested. So the most difficult part of having been through a narcissistic, antagonistic relationship, whether this relationship started in childhood, whether this is a relationship, like for example, your parent, or this is a relationship that actually didn't begin till adulthood, like a spouse or a partner. It's that in order to heal, it can feel like trying to learn to speak a new language in adulthood, which is really hard to do, or to learn to ride a bike for the first time as an adult, or to learn how to read for the first time in adulthood. These things are hard for adults to learn for the first time. Our brains are not as plastic, our bodies are not as flexible, so it's easier to learn new things as a child. Individuation is similar. The process of individuating, of having an identity of our own, it should have been unfolded over the course of childhood. And it always gets thwarted when a person has a narcissistic parent, an experience of trauma, or other forms of childhood adversity. Because the key element of healing in the long term is this thing called individuation. And when it happens right, for a child, it seems as basic and easy as adding 2 + 2, or reading a sentence, or speaking a language if we had been hearing it since we were a child. Basically, individuation means recognizing that there is a you separate from other people, and that it's okay. And the part that it is your separate you is okay is the real juice of individuation. That you feel in your body that it is okay to be a someone separate from others that has different experiences, different feelings, different preferences. So if you didn't get to learn that in childhood, it is a tough and seemingly unsafe thing to learn in adulthood. And even if you did get that in childhood, then that's great. But if over time, the lesson you got in an adult close relationship is that the only way to be loved, or that the definition of love was that you not be a separate person, that you just basically get gobbled up by someone else, well, then that is like having something happen to you, and a basic ability, like being able to write a sentence that you learned in childhood, have that taken away from you. You may have grown up, some of you may have grown up in healthy families, where being a separate individual is okay and it was safe. But then in adulthood, you meet someone toxic and all of that gets taken away because of the dynamics of that relationship. At the most basic level, and let's start there at the most basic level, let's just talk about this idea of individuation since it's so core to healing. Let's just actually start with it in a more basic way as it applies to basic bodily functions. Theoretically, we know if we're hungry or if we're tired, we need to use the restroom. And that I may be hungry or tired or need to use the restroom, but someone else I'm with may not, right? I'm traveling with someone, I'm hungry, my friend is not. I need to use a bathroom. The other person, let's say we're in a car together, they don't, right? This is my separate self, physiologically my separate self. And so I could say, hey, I'm a little hungry, and if you're not, that's okay, but I got to eat something. But any of you who has been through one of these relationships knows that even this basic physiological needs can get stolen. We not only doubt ourselves, oh, I'm not tired, I'm just being a weak loser. Of course, that's a byproduct of all the gaslighting, but we may also slowly believe that we can only have physiological needs if they are in line with what other people say, like, I should only eat when other people are hungry. I shouldn't feel hungry when other people don't feel hungry. Or no one else needs to use the restroom, so I don't need to use the restroom. This can happen when people grow up in oppressive, narcissistic systems where the will of one person dictates everyone else's rhythms. That if your needs are different from those of the others, then you are the one who's being an inconvenience. Now, so much of this is a forerunner to trauma responses, such as the fawn response and the dissociation from your sense of your separate self, if you will, is also a dissociation from your basic needs. In a narcissistic relationship, there's no separate you that gets to be hungry, that gets to eat, that gets to use the bathroom or gets to sleep. And then when we start witnessing the coercion of more severe narcissistic relationships, the control, the demand, and the shaming of your needs means that even your most basic self is not allowed to be separate. I personally grew up like this. I know this. And to this day, I carry bits and pieces of food in my bags. I go to the bathroom ahead of time so I don't inconvenience other people. And I assume that my fatigue is me not being good enough. Trust me, folks, I am 60. These patterns die hard. So normal development is organized around attachment and individuation. Human beings, human infants, are born quite fragile. Like when a little baby horse, what do they call a foal, they can learn to walk pretty soon after birth. They may need their horse mom for milk and nutrients for a little bit. But little human fragile infant couldn't even last a day on its own. It would even be a few years before we could even be safe on our own. We are fully reliant on the adults in our world as baby humans. So these human caregivers become very high stakes relationships. So it really sucks, and it's very impactful if these caregivers are selfish, entitled, unempathic, lack compassion, pathologically selfish, put themselves first, or are downright abusive. None of that is good for attachment, which we need for survival, fragile little baby, and we need it for safety, and to learn all the stuff of being a person in a relationship that we're going to need for the rest of our lives, and to feel safe in the world, and to learn who we are and who we are in reference to others, to develop our own empathy in a balanced way, not too little empathy, but also not too much. So if all of these processes go well, it cues us up for individuation. Listen, if you've ever watched a 3 or 4 year old child running around in a park near their parent, they may run away from their parent a little bit, but they'll keep looking back and referencing to the parent. The parent's still there and they want to run. The safer the child feels, the farther they will run. But they will keep looking back. And if that parent is attuned to them, the child will feel the safety and the permission to keep running. Now, are some kids so impulsive that they'll go running away? Yes, that's a different kind of a kid. But by and large, kids will reference back to their parent. As the child keeps growing, if they have the sensation that they can share an idea, a belief, a question, a need, a feeling, or just show up and be seen and heard, it builds safety in that relationship, safety in the world, and safety within themselves. As the child goes into puberty and adolescence, the real individuation work begins. And this can translate into the why are adolescents such a handful part of it. Adolescents in particular are starting to individuate. And it can feel like an almost psychologically violent process as the adolescent, that's sort of equal parts toddler and adult, starts to cut the ties to the parent while also feeling and experiencing the vulnerabilities and dependencies of being a child. Now, good parents hold space for the child to build into becoming their unique selves, their interests, their wants, their style, their aspirations. Basically, the parent saying, as the child becomes their own person with their own identity, the parent is communicating in a whole bunch of ways that I'm still here from you, but I also no longer should nor will I micromanage or expect you to be what I need you to be. The parent still has to be attuned to the child. If you had a narcissistic parent, none of this happened. Again, a narcissistic parent couldn't manage any of this. It requires too much referencing to somebody outside of them. For a narcissistic parent, the child is merely an extension of them. There is a toxic umbilical cord that exists in perpetuity that keeps the child imprisoned as a source of supply to the parent. And that toxic cord means that individuation is not a thing in these relationships, with the implicit assumption as, oh yeah, you think you are going to be your own person? Psh, you stay right there. You owe me. I'm going to guilt you and shame you and tell you that you can't do it, or just turn away from you. Individuation, when you have a narcissistic parent, becomes scary. It means losing love. It means losing support. It means walking around and being told that you're selfish, or you're greedy, you're demanding, or you're bad. And as life goes on, individuation's always going to be fraught. There's always going to be this echo of, how dare you? How dare you be your own separate person? How dare you live a life separate from what I think is the way you should be? And this is how people get stuck. Because to become your own person, especially if this was your parent, is to meet, you are told, you become your own person, you're going to lose love and you're going to use safety, or so it feels. Now, the real terror of the narcissistic relationship is to even begin to get acquainted with who you really are, what you stand for, your values, your aspirations, to be a person separate from other people. If abandonment is a core wound for you, and it is for many people, the message you get is that if you do dare to individuate, you're going to lose other people. And that means that it feels almost too primally painful to individuate, and so many people don't. So the very thing that we never learned to do, or we were told in many subtle ways that it was forbidden to individuate, is the core to healing from one of these relationships. So what the hell are we supposed to do? Well, it's more than I can do in the video, and that's what this workshop I'm doing in the healing program is. If you really want to know how to think about individuation, come to the workshop. Because the bigger questions are, how do we individuate? And how do we access this essential pathway to healing, becoming ourselves? Listen, it's one thing, and it's crucial to healing, to radically accept the narcissistic behavior, what it is, what it's about, to have realistic expectations, to recognize it won't change, to grieve and see it and get it and have supports. It's the next level of healing, to be able to hold space for the separate you from them. To be able to do this makes you more resistant to gaslighting, even from new people. It can lead you to feel more safe in the world. There can sometimes be fear. Well, if I individuate, does that make me the sort of avoidant lone wolf who doesn't need other people? Not at all. In fact, to be able to individuate, have a separate you that can welcome another person's separate you, will set you up better for relationships. There's a lot here. The stuff that happens within us in a narcissistic relationship, that stay small, don't ask for too much, the fawning, the giving in, the self-abandonment, all that is all the core of the narcissistic relationship experience. All of that contributes to what feels like the impossibility of individuation when you are in a narcissistic relationship. And these echoes can also linger and make this higher level element of healing, which is, again, so crucial, feel very difficult and even dangerous to access. So, but how difficult and dangerous it is, it's absolutely essential that we try. Well, I do hope you can join us for the workshop. And even if you're watching this down the line on a replay and you're not seeing it in July and August of 2026, you can always join our healing program and watch the archives, including this workshop on individuation. Again, all links for this are in the video notes, but I hope this also gives you an introduction to why individuation is so important and kind of how it works. Thanks again.